Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey all, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a coaching call with Liz. Liz is the mom of a 4-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl, and she asked for some support around the fact that her 4-year-old was having a lot of trouble staying asleep, going to sleep, staying asleep by himself, and they were all exhausted. So we came up with some ideas to help her and the rest of her family get more sleep. Also, he was a little worried about sleeping alone, so we talked about some strategies to help him with his fears. And be sure to stick around to hear how things went for her after we spoke. If you listened to these coaching podcasts and you thought, I could really use a coach, I could really use some support, I invite you to reach out and book a free short consult with me. I am here to support you, and also I have 2 coaches who are working with me now, 2 beautiful and wonderful peaceful parenting coaches, Corey and Stony. If you book a free short consult, I will talk to you and help you as much as I can in 20 minutes, and we can also talk about whether coaching would be good for you and if you would be a good fit with me or with Corey or with Stony. So go to my website, sararosensweet.com. Right there on the homepage, there is a button that says book a call. You can book a free short consult with me, and we can talk about what next steps might be to get you some support, either from myself or from Corey or Stony. I would love to talk to you and hear how I can support you or how we can support you and hear about what's going on that's feeling challenging in your life. So again, go to my website, sararosensweet.com. Right there on the homepage, there is a button that says book a call, where you can book a free short consult. As I said, I'll help you as much as I can in 20 minutes, and we can talk about whether coaching would be a good fit for you, either with myself or with Corey or Stony, who are both really, really wonderful coaches, and I have trained them, and they're excellent. So I look forward to seeing your name pop up on my calendar. Again, just go to my website, sararosensweet.com, and you'll find a button there that says book a call. Okay, let's meet Liz. Hi, Liz. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Could you just briefly introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Liz. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I have a 4-year-old son and a 15-month-old daughter.
Okay, great. I've actually never asked any of my podcast guests this question before, but I'm going to ask you the question that I start out asking all my one-on-one clients in our private sessions, which is, if I had a magic wand that you could use on anything in yourself, your parenting, your kids, what would you use it on?
What a great question. My mind goes to 2 places. Actually, I want to say I want to sleep through the night. But I think more so than that, the magic wand would be that we would have like a peaceful, calm, fun, loving household.
Well, the 2 things might be related.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Probably.
If you were getting more sleep, then your household might be a little bit more fun and calm and peaceful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything in particular that you find that's getting in the way? I mean, other than the sleep question, which is, I think, what you originally had reached out to me about, is there anything else in particular getting in the way of your household feeling like that, how you want it to feel?
It was 2 things, but probably, again, related to exhaustion. My responses at times, like, anger, yelling, behaving in ways I don't want to behave that don't help foster peace and harmony. And then also part of that is doing the bulk of the childcare because my husband works like very difficult hours. And so that's like an unchangeable factor here. But I would say that definitely like impacts it as well.
Yeah. And, when we have things that are unchangeable like that, and I know you work full time as well, but when we have things that are unchangeable like that, we have to like really try to get ourselves the most resources that we can. And sleep is one of those. And that's something that you're struggling with. But also, when your kids are little, I think it can be hard sometimes to feel like you want to be also doing other things, but having little kids is so hands-on and
Yeah.
labor intensive. I think sometimes there necessarily needs to be a few years where you don't do a lot of extra stuff or fun stuff, and you're really just in that survival mode. At least that's what it felt like for me when my kids were little. Like my husband, I remember once I was feeling so burned out, and my husband was like, well, you just have to cut out all the extra things you're doing. I was like, but those are all the fun things.
Right. Yeah.
So it can be really hard when you have little kids and you've got all of these demands on you. Okay, well, how can I support you today? What would be the best thing that I can support you with?
Yeah, I really believe in like a peaceful, gentle parenting approach. And I've changed some things over time with my son in particular using that approach, and I see how impactful it is. I frankly am at a loss with how to do that well with sleep. I have everybody sleeping with me every night, which is part survival, part like believing in that. But I think we're at a point where it's just not helping anybody anymore. So the scales have tipped where like, there's a lot of reasons why, but I'm feeling that it needs to be changed. And I am looking for support and guidance around like how to gently start doing that.
All right, let's talk about sleep a bit. I mean, a 4-year-old, I'm going to use the sort of bad word of should, but a 4-year-old, I think biologically should be able to sleep through the night. At least that's what I've read from different sleep sources, unless there's something else going on. And you did say that 2 factors. You did say that he recently weaned. When was that? April. So was he nursing in the night?
He was only nursing one time, and it was to go to sleep. It was, well, not to go to sleep, but like at bedtime.
At bedtime. Yeah. So that was his preferred way of getting sleepy and winding himself down. Yeah. So that's going to be huge. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Sure.
But you also said that he had some allergies that you were dealing with. And so where do you stand with that? Because I think that can be a factor that can make it hard to sleep.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. We had him assessed a couple of years ago and had to eliminate wheat and eggs from his diet, which we have successfully done. And he has bad eczema, which definitely gets in the way of sleep because he'll be up, like hear him and feel him scratching. Itchy. Yeah. But it comes and goes, right? And sometimes it's hard to know what starts it, but overall, I think the food allergies are managed. This year in particular, it seems that he's developed, I feel like he's developed environmental allergies because he's just like sneezing, stuffiness, like a lot. And that interferes with sleep as well.
Okay.
So we had to change allergists. And so I actually have an appointment for him next week.
Okay.
2 weeks rather, so that he can be reevaluated for different allergies again.
All right. So hopefully you might get some more answers from that. That'll help.
Yeah.
And in terms of your 1-year-old, you said she was 15 months?
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty normal still. I mean, at least in my experience, it's pretty normal still for a 1-year-old to be waking up in the night, which I love that you're sleeping with them. I mean, not that it's bad if you weren't sleeping with them, but I always say whatever you do to get the most sleep is what you should do. Yeah. And if you have a 1-year-old who's waking up in the night, then, if it's easy for you to get her back to sleep because you're right there, then that's probably the thing that's working for you right now. Well, first of all, tell me about how you're doing bedtime now that he's not nursing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll do like a bath, 2 of them, and then put my daughter down, and then if my husband's home, like he'll be taking care of him while I'm doing that, and if not, kind of do the phone while I'm putting her down, just so he's occupied, which I know is not the best, but it is what it is, a necessary evil. And then we kind of hang out. He usually has a snack, and we do books, and then he has like a bear nightlight thing, and so we put that on because he has some fears too. He articulates he's afraid of monsters in the room. He feels like there's monsters in the room. And then we lay down, and I'll tell him a story. He wants to be tickled on his back, and sometimes it takes him, depending on the day, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes a much longer time. And like last night, for example, I mean, he was like fidgeting, and like I know he was overtired. So tired, even saying those words, which like a 4-year-old rarely says those words, I'm tired. But then like took, half hour to settle down.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when kids are overtired, their bodies think that they're awake for a reason, like that they have to like, go on a long march through the night or something like that. And so the body will when the body's past the point of being tired, will make cortisol and adrenaline, which keeps you awake, right? Makes it harder to fall
Right.
asleep.
Yeah.
So I call that missing the window. Somebody else that I know calls it going over the falls, and sometimes kids will get kind of wild at night when they've missed that window because of that cortisol and adrenaline that their bodies are making. So it's good that you recognize that it's important to try and, if possible, get him before he gets too overtired, because otherwise it can cause him to stay awake longer. And so does he if he's not overtired, does he fall asleep pretty easily with the back scratching? And
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, and I noticed, I think at least that my kids have their, I don't even know what to call it officially. I don't know if there's an official name, but like they have like a specific time, right? Like a specific window of time that they need to sleep during the night or during the day, total sleep time, I guess.
Yeah.
You call like, what is that called? And so he's like about, I want to like 10 and a half hours.
That's his optimal amount of sleep.
Yeah, it is. And I think part of the reason he might have sleep issues is because I fought that for a long time, because I was like, why does this child not sleep 3 hours during the day? Like, I had these expectations of his sleep that never were the case for him. My daughter is about 12 and a half hours still. Yeah. So, the upshot of that is that if he naps during the day, which I don't have control over often, that bedtime could be 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Can you ask them at his daycare or pre-K?
I have. They do work with me. They wake him up and things like that, but it's not optimal.
Right. Is there a time when they all lie down or something and then he falls asleep?
They have a very long time frame that they have for downtime, I think.
Right.
And so if he falls asleep right away, like he could sleep for, an hour and a half, which is too long.
I find that some states actually have the mandated rest time for 4-year-olds. I'm not sure if your state is one of them, but also I think sometimes daycares use it to give people breaks during the day. And so it can be really hard if you don't want your kid to be sleeping. So I'm really sorry that that's happening to you, because that's really frustrating to have someone awake still till 9:30 or 10 at night.
It's late.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's that he's really not ready to sleep. And sometimes it's like yesterday because he woke up earlier because the baby woke up and then he didn't nap. He just didn't nap. And so he was overtired, right? So it's like I'm having both extremes, but it's still like a 9:30 bedtime. Like at 9, it's like it's late. Yeah.
But they can tell you at the daycare if he's slept or not, right?
That's
so
right.
You can be a little bit prepared, like, okay, he didn't nap today or he did nap today. So you can still try to get him ready in the window where you think he's going to fall asleep. And just for anyone listening, what you mentioned, the 10 and a half hours, that I think for 4-year-olds, it's 11 to 13 is it sounds like you're aware that his sleep needs are lower than another 4-year-old's might be. So I'm just pointing out, it's usually 11 to 13. 10 and a half is not extremely a lot lower than 11. But yeah, it would make a difference if he's napping at school. Okay, so he falls asleep, and then tell me about you said he's also waking up at night, not just his sister.
Yeah, he is.
So what happens when he wakes up?
It's not a full wake up typically, but he is reaching for me. I still face her. I'm in the middle of them, and I still face her because she's 15 months and she nurses. And so I know it's upsetting to him. He wants me to face him. And I've talked to him about this, of course, but it's hard. He seems like he's afraid, or he tells me that I'm afraid and he wants me to cuddle with him. And sometimes I do that. But so he'll kind of like cry out, even though I'm right there, put his arm around me, try sometimes moving his legs to kind of get me, wrap around me. But he falls back to sleep.
Mm-hmm. And you said you've tried having him sleep with his dad?
Yes.
And how does that go?
They sleep terribly.
Okay.
He says, like, my husband says he's just all night, he's moving around. He's just like, constantly moving around.
Right. But he doesn't move around when he's with you?
It depends on the night. Sometimes he does. Yeah. It's a good question. I noticed that sometimes it's like he sleeps so soundly. Even if he wakes up, he's still sleeping soundly. And other times it's like he's on fire. Like, you're just fidgeting, twitching.
Right.
Can't settle. Yeah.
Okay. So, there's a couple things that stand out to me. One is, like, if the family bed works, the family bed works.
Uh-huh.
But it sounds like it's maybe, I'm wondering if you want to transition to him being like in his own bed next to you rather than in the bed with you. I see a couple of different ideas that you could do a separate bed with your husband. Maybe he sleeps on a bed on the floor with your husband. And so, he's right there, but he's not going to interrupt your husband's sleep by flip-flopping around. That's one idea that I have. And also, I think that we want to address the worry, like the monsters, right? Or I'm scared. Do you get the sense that that he really is scared? Because I know not that I don't want to believe kids, but I know sometimes kids say I'm scared because they know that'll get the parent to be with them. So do you get the sense that he really is scared, that he believes it, or that he knows that that's a good way to get you to be with him?
That's a good question. I think that he is scared, but I'm hesitating because, and the reason I think he's scared is that sometimes even during the day when he's alone, either in my room or his room, he will cry out and come find me right away. Like,
Okay.
acting like he's scared. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And so I've noticed it happening more and more. And I'm now thinking about it. Seems like it's happening more since weaning, which makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
But I think he is afraid of his room, unfortunately, and afraid of my room to an extent, and thinks there's monsters there. And in the dark, it feels obviously more intense. But he's more afraid of my room than his own room.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely don't do what I have seen recommended in like parenting articles, which is to have monster spray where you spray the spray around. Don't do that, because that's sort of like saying, we say, oh, there are no monsters, but we'll spray this lavender water around your room and we'll call it monster spray. That would be very, very confusing for kids.
Right. Yeah.
So don't do that. I think that this would be a perfect opportunity to start talking to him about his worry brain. If you've listened to podcasts before, you know that I'm a big fan of Lynn Lyons' book, Lynn Lyons and Reed Wilson's book, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. I will link to that in the show notes. I also have a blog post that goes over sort of the big ideas of using the worry brain approach, which I will also link to in the show notes, but I'll just go over this with you, which is basically a way of helping him with his fears. So you want to teach him about how his brain works. Basically, there's a part of our brain that's responsible for keeping us safe. It's our amygdala, or our worry brain, and it lets us know when there's an emergency, right? If we lived in the woods and a bear jumped out in front of us in the path, then our amygdala would tell us that we need to run away from the bear, or, fight, flight, or freeze response, right, is what the amygdala does. So it would tell us to run away or play dead or fight the bear. But you can teach him that his amygdala is so good at its job, his worry brain is so good at its job, that sometimes it thinks that there's an emergency when there's no emergency. And that our amygdala is our friend, our worry brain is our friend, but sometimes it does too good of a job. And an analogy I like is, I don't know if you have a smoke detector in your kitchen or if it ever goes off when you burn something, but sometimes our amygdala can be like that smoke alarm, which when the toast burns, the smoke alarm goes off even though there's not a real fire. Because sometimes, unless we tell it, our worry brain or our amygdala doesn't know if it's a real emergency or like a fake emergency, right? So you can tell him, your worry brain is so silly. Your worry brain thinks that there are monsters in your room. Are there any such thing as monsters? No, there are no monsters, right? And you're going to talk to him about this not at bedtime at, 10 at night when he's saying there are monsters in my room, but you're going to talk to him about it when it's not an issue, when he's not scared. And so this is not one conversation. This is like lots of conversations. And for anyone listening, you can use this for anything, not just monsters, or, you can use it for sleeping. I used it with my daughter with sleeping alone. She was afraid to sleep alone. You can use it for any fears, the worry brain approach. So you want to have a conversation with him about how his brain works. Explain to him about his worry brain. Lynn suggests that you get them to name their worry brain. My sister's daughter's worry brain is like stinky baddie pants or something like that. So like come up with a funny name and then practice saying, sometimes when you're asleep or going to sleep at night, your worry brain shows up and tells you there are monsters. What are you going to say to your worry brain? Because the rational, we're trying to engage the rational part of his brain, right? The thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, we're trying to engage that in being able to talk back to the worry brain. So you can have lots of funny conversations about how there are no monsters and it's just his silly worry brain. And when he says to you, I'm scared, there are monsters, you can say, oh, looks like your worry brain showed up like it always does at bedtime or in the middle of the night or as you said, when you're alone in the room, or these different points. What are you going to say to your worry brain? And so it's a practice. Like it's not like a one and done conversation. Sure. And it's coaching, like it's going to be lots of coaching in the moment. But I think that would be helpful as part of this, I need you, I'm scared. And hopefully like as a bridge to him being able to sleep eventually in his own room, because I'm sure at some point you want to have your bedroom back, whenever that is, and
Yes.
maybe be able to sleep with your partner again. That's,
Yes.
dreams,
I know.
dreams and goals.
Exactly.
And so just having this family way of speaking about worry, I think will be helpful, not just for the
Mhm.
nighttime thing, but for other things if he has a tendency to get a little bit anxious. So I would talk to him about that. And you can also talk to him parallel to this about how his worry brain tells him that you have to be facing him, or that he has to be touching you, or that he has to be in the bed with you.
Right.
And, you can say, well, first of all, before I go on about the worry, more than on the worry brain, do you have any questions about the worry brain?
No, I think it's really clear. One thing I'll say, and you reminded me when you were talking about this, is that he actually has expressed that he wants to sleep alone.
Oh, okay.
But
Cool.
right, so I mean, but the
Yeah.
fear, like he knows that that's something that he wants to do.
Great. So
And
that's
he's
really
like, "Mommy and
important.
Daddy will sleep in their bed. I'll sleep in my bed, and Jade will
Yeah.
sleep in her crib." Like he
Yeah.
actually like has the whole vision. I'm like, "Yes, like that sounds amazing."
So that's
Yeah.
great, because often kids, will, if they don't want to use the worry brain tool, it can be a lot harder. If he's like,
Mm,
no, I'm happy to sleep with you, and I want to be touching you all night, and I don't mind if there are monsters as long as I'm with you, right? So it can be a little bit
right.
hard if he doesn't have buy-in. So, I would make sure that his room, just to support this idea of sleeping alone, that his room is like a wonderful, comfortable place. You spend
Yeah.
time playing in there, so he's comfortable in there, that his bed is cozy, that he has, loveys that he feels secure with, but just make his bed and his room as attractive as possible, and sort of be
Mm-hmm.
working towards that. But I would, I think the next place that I would go is how the goal that you talked about of wanting to have a happy, joyful family life. And I would talk to him. I used to say this to my kids. I'm like, if you want to have fun, mommy, tomorrow, you got to let me sleep. Like, because if I don't get enough
Real.
sleep, I'm really cranky. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really cranky if I don't get enough sleep. And so you can talk about all the fun things that, the more energy that you're going to have for doing fun things, and I don't know what you can think of, things that are meaningful to him,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not like you're going to say, well, I won't play with you if we're not sleeping, but you can just
Right.
say, life will be so much happier and better in our family if mommy and daddy can get enough sleep. And so,
Yeah.
like, let's work towards that.
Yeah.
I would talk to him about that. And so one of the things that you might do towards that goal is maybe you put a bed on the floor of his room, like a mattress or something. He starts sleeping in his own bed. Your husband sleeps on the floor temporarily next to him, as sort of a bridge towards him sleeping on his own, just so he's getting used to sleeping without touching anyone. He knows your husband's right there, holding his hand if he needs to in the night, not far away. And then you can work towards him sleeping on his own. But I think in tandem with all of this, he also needs to know how to go back to sleep by himself when he wakes up in the night, which is a skill, right? Like, we don't really realize it as a skill because we just wake up, we pull the covers back on ourselves and, turn over and go to sleep. We don't even aren't even aware sometimes that we've woken up. But it's actually being able to put yourself to sleep is a skill. And I think that's what you're noticing is a little tricky right now, because he had previously done breastfeeding until he got sleepy. And so I want to say that was his sleep aid, right? That was like his sleep aid for a long time to be able to do that. So we need to introduce like new patterns, new routines in terms of what he will do when he wakes up. So I will share with you what I did with my kids when I was transitioning them to going back to sleep on their own. And I think none of them slept through the night till they were over 3. But we did have to work on, okay, what do you do when you wake up? You don't need to wake up mom, but you can go
Mm-hmm.
back to sleep on your own. So I coached them to do what I would say: when you wake up, you can pull up your blanket, grab your stuffy, and roll over and go back to sleep. That was like, we would practice it during the day. Okay, what are you going to do when you wake up? And it got shortened to roll back to sleep, because then at night I'd say, what are you going to do when you wake up? Roll back to sleep. So it was like, pull your blanket up, grab your stuffy, roll over, and go back to sleep. And sometimes I would say to them in the training phase, when they would wake up, I'd just say, it's time to sleep. I'd whisper. I'm not going to whisper for the podcast because you might not be able to hear me, but I would whisper, all the birdies are sleeping, all the doggies are sleeping, grandma's sleeping, your auntie's sleeping. And I would just quietly, it's time to go to sleep. So what are you going to do? Roll over and go back to sleep. So there was sort of like this teaching, coaching, learning process, which I think you're going to have to do if you want to get yourself away from being the sleep aid for him going back to sleep.
Yep. That's right. Mm-hmm.
So it is work. You look a little like, this sounds like this sounds like a lot of work. And you know what? This may be one of those things where the problem is less painful than the solution. Like whenever I'm coaching people, whenever, I make a suggestion and the solution sounds daunting, I say this is a time where you need to decide, you need to weigh the two things. Like, is this process of using the worry brain approach, coaching him, reminding him of these things when he wakes up in the night, which is worse, that or being woken up and not getting a full night's sleep? So that's not a question you have to answer right now, but that's something for you to think about and decide what you want to do.
It made me think that actually I'd done something. It reminded me that I'd done something similar with him before, and I kind of forgot about it, which is to help him stop nursing at night, which I did when I was pregnant, because I thought I was going to fully wean him, but that didn't happen. But over time, I was able to kind of coach him to, when you wake up, he calls nursing dis. So instead of drinking dis, you can cuddle dis.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, he was able to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just reminding me that. And I think maybe the other thing, maybe I was making a face too, is because I was jumping ahead to think about how am I going to coach my daughter?
Yeah.
And maybe it's too soon to do that. I don't know. But that's another thing,
Yeah, it's probably too soon for you to be able to have those verbal, the verbal things. But yeah, she's still pretty little. And depending on, you might find that if Samuel's not waking you up at night, her waking up at night is not quite as bad as two people waking you up at night. I don't know.
Sometimes it feels like they're both each other up. Right.
Like one thing at a time. You can get Samuel sleeping through the night, and then you can look at, okay, what are we going to do about the baby in terms of her sleeping? And can we reduce the number of times that she wakes up in the night? And it might be that, stopping nursing her at night would make her sleep through the night.
That's good advice. Focus on one thing.
Yeah. Don't look at both at the same time. Like, let's figure out how we can get Samuel. Like, I honestly, my honest opinion is that if you're in bed with him, he's going to keep wanting you to be putting him back to sleep. And if I really, honestly, I'm totally proponent of the family bed for the people who that works for, but it will be very hard for you to not get him to wake you up. So that's why I'm suggesting that he starts sleeping with your husband in his own bed with your husband on the floor next to him. And maybe, you probably get a lot of closeness and connection time sleeping. So maybe try and up your, cuddle time during the day to make up for it. And again, I'm only encouraging you to make this transition because it seemed like now isn't working for you. Otherwise, I'd say, great, keep sleeping with your 4-year-old and 1-year-old if that's working and you're getting enough rest.
No, I don't think it's working for anybody. But because the other piece of it is that, I'm completely sleep deprived, but they're not getting the best sleep either, though. Mm-hmm. Like, that's really what's kind of tipping the scales for me. I'm like, nobody here is sleeping well. Yeah. Like, it's not just mom, or dad. Like, it's nobody. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that your husband will be on board for sleeping in your son's room? Like, do you have a mattress you can throw on the floor for a little while to help him?
Yeah, I think consistency is hard just for us in general, if I'm honest. And also because of his work schedule, sometimes he's not there at bedtime.
Right.
So we'll have to kind of figure out, I don't know. But I think either way, like consistency on the nights when he's not there and consistency on the nights when he is there, right? Like, that's the best we can do. It's going to be important. And I know that we haven't been as consistent as we could be because we've been just trying to survive.
Well, as I said before, often like whatever you can do to get the most sleep is the right thing to do for your family. Whether it's co-sleeping, sleeping alone, whatever you can do to get the most sleep when your kids are little, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So many clients that I work with are worried about like, well, aren't I making, if I let my kids sleep with me, aren't I making bad habits? And you can always change habits. Like you're not setting anything in stone. And the older kids get, the easier it is to convince them of these changes than when they're really little. So I think you're in a great spot with Samuel that he's expressed interest in wanting to sleep on his own and, maybe going straight from sleeping with you to sleeping alone, maybe just a little too much. So bridging that with sleeping with dad next to him on the floor. And maybe even when dad's not there, you have that same mattress on the floor next to you and he's still sleeping on his own, but not like with you in the bed. And to get the buy-in for this, like not only, he said he wants to sleep on his own, but also having happy and fun mom and dad in the morning and, the next day is part of what your job can be.
Yeah,
You letting us sleep at night makes us have more fun with you the next day because we're not cranky.
that's true. That's exactly true.
All right. Well, do you want to try that? And we'll talk in a couple of weeks and see how things are going, and we'll troubleshoot it. If it's not working, we'll see what's going on.
Yes, I'll definitely try it.
Okay. Do you have any questions or any sort of concerns that are coming up right away about what might not work about it?
No, I don't actually. Yeah, I think it's just like talking to my husband, coming up with a plan, figuring out when we're going to start it.
Yeah. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. And so I think having that worry brain, the worry brain strategy going at the same time will be helpful, because when your husband wants to move out of the room altogether, that's going to be a time where you're really going to be able to employ the worry brain. He's like, but I can't, I'm anticipating that there might be some second thoughts about sleeping by himself. So you can say, but I'm scared. Like, I need you to sleep with, oh, there's your worry brain again, telling you that you need mom or dad to be in the room with you. What can you tell your worry brain? Lynn Lyons talks about this sort of the sleep thing, and she says, she's heard of parents with like the chair method, like I'll sit by you and you fall asleep, and kids are fine until you actually get out the door. And so so you actually need to have the tools, right? That for when you you are eventually going to have him sleeping on his own. And it might
Yeah,
take a while. Like first we want to get him sleeping through the night with a parent in his room, and then we can talk about parent moving out of his room.
I hadn't thought about that. That makes sense, because I think we've like snuck out. It's like the sneaking out doesn't work over time, because then they're worried that you're not, like, they know you're not going to be. They don't have, like you said, they don't have the tools.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
do it by themselves. So no, that makes sense. Okay.
All right. Well, sounds good. I will talk to you in a few weeks.
So thank you.
Hi, Liz. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah, it was a little longer than we intended. Our summer plans kept us both from hopping on the podcast together, but now here we are. It's been actually a few months instead of a few weeks since we last spoke, which is fine. And so why don't you give us a little bit of an update about how things are going with Samuel and his sleep?
Yeah. So I would say things are improved.
Good.
I was not able to, or I shouldn't say was not able to, I did not implement a few of the strategies that we talked about, in just full transparency.
That's fine.
One thing that we have been using is the worry brain.
Good.
And sort of just helping him being more cognizant of those kind of worried thoughts or fearful thoughts, of which, he has around sleep, but also other things too. And I think particularly because he transitioned from a daycare he had been at for a long time to a camp. And so it's been fun for him and a great experience, but also a fearful experience in a way, and has had some trouble adjusting. And so we've been able to use that in that context too, which has been helpful.
Good. So he likes the concept and he's finding it helpful for him.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
And then I think at the same time, because of the camp experience, and just he's getting older, right? Like, he's finding independence in different ways. And so he's talking even more now than ever about sleeping by himself. He's testing it out.
Good. What does that look like?
It looks like him going into his room more often alone. But that's a little bit of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I do notice that he is increasing like his time there.
Does he play in his room?
Plays. Yeah,
Great.
he talks about sleeping and he like pretends that he's going to sleep, but he doesn't actually like lay in the bed. But he like says, he's like, yeah, we're going to all nap and things like that. But then I think he winds up taking that play out of the room once it gets to it.
Yeah. Well, it's good that he's feeling more comfortable. The more comfortable he feels in his room, the more likely he's going to want to sleep. It's going to be that he wants to sleep in there.
Yeah, right. And then, so that's good. And then the other thing is that he has been, I don't know if you remember, my husband's schedule is kind of funky. So like, he's not with us 4 nights of the week during bedtime. And so what I have been working towards is like him sleeping with my husband, at least like during the nights that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're getting there.
Good.
We're getting there. Yeah. Without too much fuss.
Well, I know we talked about putting a bed on the floor for your husband
Hmm.
because Samuel moves around so much. Are
Yeah.
they finding they can share a bed okay, or did you go with a different bed?
Yeah, so funny. I mean, I don't know if it's the camp activity and the heat or whatever, but like he sleeps like a log now.
Oh,
Like
good.
he really, even when he's sleeping with me, like it's a noticeable difference in
That's
terms of
great.
his wiggling. Like, yeah, it's really profound. It just shows me. I'm like, I think he's just a kid that needs, probably a lot of kids need, like just a lot of outdoor time and
Yeah,
activity.
totally.
Yeah. So his time to get to sleep is absolutely shortened. So
Good.
that kind of lessens the tension between us, right? Because
Good.
it's not
Yeah.
taking like an hour to get him to sleep. And then also he's sleeping more soundly. So he has been actually sleeping with my husband like very well when they sleep together.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
and what I said to you the first time we talked is whatever gets you the most sleep as a family is the best thing to do at this age, right?
Sure.
When you've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, that's
Hmm.
the best thing you can do is whatever gets you the most sleep. And,
Hmm.
I also want to point out that as kids get older, they usually become better sleepers. Like I think I don't know if it's biological or if it's just practice, but, they wake up less, fewer times in the night, and they go to sleep more easily on the whole. Of course, there are
Sure.
exceptions. And I also wanted to say, in terms of the worry brain, and this is what I tell my clients all the time, like the hardest time to use the worry brain is at night. Like
Mm.
that's the hardest time because kids are tired, and that's kind of like the bedtime separation is kind of the biggest thing. But the
Yeah.
more you can practice it on other things, I always say start with the smallest thing and
Mm.
move on to the more challenging things, because the more practice you have using the worry brain approach, then you can work up to using it at night if he's, scared of sleeping by himself in his room. So it's awesome that you're using it in other contexts, because by the time, you finally get to a point where you're like, okay, we want to make a change, I want to sleep with my husband again, or whatever,
Mhm.
then you'll have that vocabulary and those skills that he's already developed, and he can use them for sleeping alone.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah,
It makes so
good. I think it's totally fine that you didn't end up trying the things that we suggested, because you found your own way, and that's
Mhm.
great. You found your own way to make it work. Was
Yeah.
there anything else that you wanted to ask me about or touch base with for what we talked about last time?
I think, one thing that's top of my mind right now, speaking of sleeping with my husband again, we're actually going, my husband has surprised me with a overnight, one night trip this Sunday, actually, because it's our anniversary on
Oh,
Monday.
happy anniversary.
Thank you. And so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also very anxious because of, just how everybody sleeps or doesn't sleep in this house.
Who's
And
staying with your
so
kids?
my mom is coming and they
Okay.
know her very well. And she's stayed with them. She stayed with Samuel before, so,
Mhm.
but it's still top of my mind, especially since with my daughter, illness has just prevented us from sleeping well the last little while. So
Mhm.
yeah, just wanted to say that out loud to somebody who
Yeah,
understands.
I totally understand. I remember leaving the first time my husband and I went away overnight, and I think my son, we only had one child at the time, and I think he was about 1.5, and he was still breastfeeding. And I remember being at the B&B before Airbnb times. It was actually just a B&B,
Yeah.
expressing milk because my breast got so full, and I'm like, it's like, this is really uncomfortable. And I was worried about him, but he was fine. He was with his grandparents.
Yeah.
And, I was going to say, though, if your mom is a trooper and she's going to be okay to be up and down throughout the night, which she might be if the kids, are missing you or having trouble sleeping without you, you'll be home the next day and everyone will be fine.
Yeah. I know
And
you're
there
right.
there was somebody that they know and they love, and
Mhm.
they might be unhappy, and that's okay. If
Right.
your mom, the biggest thing is that there was someone who can handle their unhappiness, and
Yeah.
that there was someone who's going to be okay with maybe being woken up in the night because they're like, where's mom? Where's
Mhm.
dad? And they'll be totally fine.
I know you're right. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. They will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay if kids are unhappy sometimes. Like, we do our best to meet their needs, but we also don't need to sacrifice ourselves, 24/7 every day of every week of every month. And you deserve to get away for a night with your husband.
I think I'm learning that slowly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, have fun.
Thank you. Yeah,
Oh,
I should enjoy it, right?
yes, you should enjoy it. And, every time you can talk to your worry brain when
That's
the
true.
kids pop up and you think, oh, are they okay? And you can say, okay, worry brain, my mom's got this. I should, enjoy my time with my partner right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, though, I remembered that you had one of the things that you thought Samuel was preventing him from sleeping better was his allergies, and you had an appointment with the allergist. Do you think that was part of it also, or is that not making a difference?
I'm wondering, no, it's a great question. So we went through one round of allergy testing. We actually have the second round next week. And we found out that he has dust allergy, which is like, I don't even know how to, that's just like a tricky one. And a dog allergy, which we don't have a dog, but just really good to know. And it was like profoundly, he's like very allergic to dogs, apparently.
Okay.
And so this next round is a food allergy and a retest. And he actually had a few weeks ago, he actually had an allergic reaction to some sort of nut or nut oil that he had. That was it. And it was hives, and his mouth got swollen, and so it was really scary.
Yeah.
So we had an appointment scheduled, and then we had to reschedule it because he had Benadryl, and it was like a whole thing.
Oh yeah.
So now finally, I'm looking forward to getting that answered and know exactly what this allergy is, because this seems new.
Good. Well, that's good that you are on top of it. Just a funny thing, my middle son is allergic to dust also. He's 18 now when we found out, I think when he was around 6 or something. And still to this day, I can tell he's awake in the morning when I hear him sneezing. He wakes up and up and starts sneezing, blows his nose and gets up for the day.
Yeah, I know there's things you could just like wash the bedding, wash the stuffed animals. It's just like, but how can you conquer dust,
Well, especially maybe for me in an 18-year-old's room, like he doesn't really want, like he doesn't clean his room very well, and he doesn't really want me in there cleaning his room. So he sneezes. That's the way it is.
That's what it is. I kind of accepted that. I'm like, my son is going to have, for the most part, a runny nose. I mean, right now it went away, and I'm knocking on wood, because this is the first time in 2 months that he actually seems to be not congested. So we'll see.
All right. Well, good luck to you, and have so much fun at your overnight.
Thank you,
and drop me a line when everyone's sleeping through the night, and I'll do a little happy dance for you.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.